Coming up on today's show, we look back at highlights from Season 2 on today's Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. It's the end of the summer and we are at the end of season number 2. On today's program, we're going to rewind all the way back and look at highlights from the entire season. We'll hear tips from some of the top professional organizers in the nation. So let's jump in right now with highlights from season 2 of Keeping You Organized. Season number 2, and we're doing something a little different today. We have a panel discussion with some of the top professional organizers in the nation, representing a little bit different views on how you choose a professional organizer, because maybe you're one of these people who has tried to do it yourself, done a few things and realized, you know what, I can't do it myself. I need to hire a professional organizer.
Maybe some of the people who are looking and listening today don't really know what NAPO is. So it's the National Association of Professional Organizers. We have about 4,000 members worldwide. And when you come to our site, you can get information and tips just on getting organized. It's set up for people who want to be an organizer and those who are looking for services. So we're kind of a one-stop shop. And when you go to our directory, then you would look at an area. If you're looking for a particular expertise, you're saying, I need help in my business, or I need help setting up files, I need help with learning how to use my iPhone, or I need help with residential, whatever it is. And you can look within a small area for those organizers that are in your area.
I think for me, NAPO is the difference between printing a business card saying I'm a professional organizer and starting a business being committed to being a professional organizer. And NAPO gave me that opportunity to not only add more credentials and more continuity, but I bring things to my clients that I might not otherwise have access to as far as education. There's a great community network called Point, where if I'm working with a certain client where I just don't have the answers, I can throw the question out there and maybe another organizer across the world has had the same problem or can give suggestions. And that's been fabulous for me.
And Louise, you're the president of the Minnesota chapter, so there's not only national chapters, there's state. Is there even below state? I mean, are there city chapters too, or?
Yeah, well, generally, we chose to be a Minnesota chapter 20 years ago when we founded our particular entity because we wanted to reach out to people like Tammy who were outstate, and actually even western Wisconsin, North South Dakota, and part of Iowa. But there are cities that actually do. San Francisco is a great example of a chapter that's very strong and vibrant, been there for many, many years, and is focused around that Bay Area.
Right.
But we definitely, on the state level, follow a lot of the same pieces around education. So we meet on a regular basis, monthly, and 5 times a year we are focused on developmental type of programming for your skills, for how you can market your business and build your business, and then also kind of your professional development.
Linda Samuels joining us again. Linda, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, John?
I am just feeling really good. So it's always fun to talk to you because you got a lot of energy and you always have a lot of great tips and information for us. So let's get into it right away. We teased the 3 essentials for staying organized. What are the 3? And let's dig into them.
Well, the 3 are thoughts, time, and space.
All right.
And, yeah.
Well, let's start with thoughts. I mean, that's a good place to start.
Like, what are we thinking right now?
Yeah.
Well, actually, before I even start with those, to set them up, when you're looking at any of them, you want to think about the idea of being organized enough. So in any of these areas we're going to talk about, we're not looking at perfection. We're looking at what's reasonable. So things to think about are that there's variations in what organized looks and feels like for each of us in those areas. So just be aware of that.
Well, I think a lot of people don't think of it this way, but a kitchen is really the hub of the home. A lot of activities happen there. And I really believe that if you're organized in your kitchen, it can make for a healthier eating and cooking environment. So they're kind of tied together. So the organization comes first.
But there's nothing about healthy as far as like you have to have like a juicer instead of like a microwave or something like that. We're not talking necessarily dietary, but we're talking Okay.
I'm not a nutritionist, so I can't give advice in that
Okay.
realm. But, as I'll talk about, clean surfaces are important. Just being organized can help you have fresh food. Also, just not overbuying your food so it doesn't go bad, giving yourself space to work. And also, there are some hidden dangers in the kitchen that I think if you're organized and smart about where you put things, it can be a safer environment too.
We're gonna take a shift here and talk about wardrobe and wardrobe wisdom. Explain what that means.
That is a lot of people, regardless of age, where they live, gender, male, female, students, older people, midlife crisis, post pregnancy, you name it. A lot of people are trying to create a better budget, spend less, wear what they have more, and really get the biggest bang for their buck with clothing and accessories and closet space and all that good stuff. So there's a lot of reasons that people would call an organizer to help get their closets and their wardrobes organized. So I'm hoping to enlighten them.
Well, that's great. And we're not just going to run to thrift stores and try to find great steals. We've got a more methodical approach we're going to talk about.
That's exactly right. I have 7 tips that I usually do this in my own business with clients, and I'm happy to share with all the listeners today. So tell me when you're ready. I'll launch
We're
into.
all about tips here. So
Okay.
And let's start at the beginning. Number 1, how do we get some wardrobe wisdom, and what's the first thing you look at?
Okay, the very first thing I suggest everybody do, man, woman, child, beast, is take your measurements. Without this, there's really no point. And one of the main reasons you want to take your measurements is because more and more of us are shopping online today, and it helps as a time saver in the long run. If you know your measurements, you can order appropriately rather than ordering 2 or 3 things, having that on your credit card, and then having to rush to return them, or worse, procrastinate and miss the deadline for a return, and then you're stuck with that big bill. So number 1 thing is take your measurements.
What does DDD stand for?
Well, DDD is an affliction that I've encountered many times working as a professional organizer, and what that stands for is delayed decision disorder.
Okay, now is this a real diagnosable thing, or I mean, how do you know someone has it? You meet with clients, right? You put out a little prescription pad and say, oh, you've got DDD and here's the answer.
Well, it's not a true medical description, but it is, in fact, what I find when I deal with clients that have piles of papers and accumulated miscellaneous items throughout the house. One thing about DDD is it's not a problem unless you think it's a problem. So if we find ourselves surrounded by piles and piles of things and it's sucking the energy and the life out of us, we need to take a look and see if we can find a cure for that.
We're going to talk a lot. You've got a lot of fun things going on in your business, and you have a TV show. But today we're going to kind of focus on, what's your organizing personality, and how many different organizing personalities are there?
Well, I have determined that there are 4 based on all of, my experience working with my clients. And I'll tell you, John, I was really excited recently to be working with Better Homes and Gardens magazine. They put out a yearly edition called Secrets of Getting Organized, which is really exciting. And so other professional organizers like myself get to work with the staff at Meredith Company. And I was working with Brian Kramer, and he had asked me, look, I want you to come up with some personality types and let's, write an article. So we're able to do that. And here are the 4 that I came up with. The first one is Tidy Trish, then we have Social Sally, and then we have Visual Vivian and Multitasking Millie.
Okay, now they're all women, so that makes me feel
Yes.
good. I'm not going to fit into any of those types,
Yes,
but I'm sure I'll relate to some of them,
We can
right?
make Tidy Trish, Tidy Ted if you want.
Okay, all right, that sounds good.
The high level picture is just eliminating the things that you don't need in your life, eliminating the unnecessary. And that could be something it could be something in your schedule. It could be something in your environment, which we think of all the time as professional organizers. It could be something in your mind. So eliminating the things that that don't serve you, so to speak, that are unnecessary.
Okay, well, I bet there's probably some steps to this process. So let's just say I'm a new client coming to you, and I say, first of all, what am I saying? Am I calling it, I'd like to add space to my life, or what am I dealing with?
Absolutely. Every client is a little bit different, but basically, I feel that professional organizers are called in when clients are a little bit in overwhelm or they're stuck.
Well, you've got a fascinating story. We're going to talk about green organizing, and I know you're passionate about that, and there's a backstory to that. So let's let our audience know, why are you into green organizing?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Brazil, and I moved to the States when I was around 15. But in Brazil, I grew up in São Paulo, which is, and I grew up in a part of the city that is fairly poor. And as you know, natural resources are very scarce. So in Brazil, basically what people do is you can sell plastic and newspapers and cardboard and all sorts of natural resources that people now in the United States, we just recycle. But there you can actually sell that stuff. So funny enough, there was a recycling center right up the street from me from where I grew up. And I'd be fascinated to just go there and look at what they were doing and what they were recycling. Of course, the piles were neatly organized. So that appealed to my organized side. And once again, it was a way to, earn a couple of extra dollars that could, be school lunch money or whatever.
Well, I think one of the most underutilized strategies to get control of the toys is to stop the influx. A lot of my clients are very good at purging when I arrive and helping them sort through things, but they don't get the part about you have to slow down what's coming in.
That means you have to talk to the grandparents, though, because they're the ones that are buying like the 1,500-piece puzzle, aren't they?
Right, exactly. There's definitely some good strategies to help reduce the toy clutter that comes in as gifts. I like to suggest to people that they can tell the grandparents and the aunts and uncles that we are so blessed to have so much already, and that maybe we could consider some non-thing type gifts.
Well, so I know, but grandparents like to spoil their grandkids, don't they?
Definitely.
Yeah,
not every grandparent is going to be open to that idea for sure. But one of the examples I like to use for grandparents is, if the grandparents are young and spry enough, give the kids a gift of an outing with grandma and grandpa, taking them to a great museum or an amusement park.
Yeah, I think that's a fine approach. When someone is ready to get organized, they call in a professional, and you guys work elbow to elbow and clear out a lot of clutter. And I just want to open up the perspective that you've really got to feel good before you want to clean up your act, whether one way or another. But I just think that we're not talking enough about how health and vitality is actually really a foundation of changing your life in any way. So I just think that we start with trying to change our life, and I think we should start with feeling really good in our lives.
Well, give me an example of that. How can someone feel better before they start getting organized?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of clutter and disorganization is kind of a chicken egg effect of, do I not feel good so I'm not cleaning up, or do I not clean up and then it makes me not feel good? And I think there's a lot of guilt and shame about having a lot of clutter. And I just want people to be a little bit more gentle with themselves. And instead of looking around saying, I really should clean this up, I think I'd like to start with, I really should feel better. So what can I do to feel better?
Well, I agree. Trying to get kids to do chores is kind of a constant battle I hear from lots and lots of parents. And so I was formerly a teacher. And so one of the things I do to encourage parents to get their kids to do chores is kind of a lesson plan approach. And so the first thing is you got to set the stage. You got to get them excited about what you're about to teach them, and talking about why chores are important, what are the benefits, and helping out in the house, helping your parents out. And it's good to be a contributing member, part of this family, or their parents are feeling overwhelmed, they really need help, and it teaches responsibility. And the younger you start with kids also is easier, because the younger they are, the more willing they become.
Yeah, I mean, it's really overwhelming with the holiday season because we already feel like we don't have enough time in our days to do everything that we have to do, let alone the things that we want to do. And then the holiday comes, and there's all this added stress of, the gift shopping and the gatherings. And so it's really overwhelming for all, all of my clients to try to fit it all in, because you don't want to just be doing stuff. You want to also be able to enjoy and be present in those parties and gatherings and all the good things about the holidays.
Okay, so your book has a tease there, The Secret to Peak Productivity. What is the secret? How do we achieve that?
So the secret, if I had to just put it in one word, would be choice. Choice, because I think a lot of people feel like they don't have control of their days, and you hear a lot of most common need associated with productivity is time management. So you hear a lot of different techniques and ideas for managing time, and the truth is that we can't really manage time. It just happens. Everybody has 24 hours in a day, and so I approach it from the angle of choice management. We can manage the choices that we have of things to do in a certain time frame. And so, time management, productivity is about making the right choices.
This is Keeping You Organized, and we are watching highlights from our Season 2 of broadcasts. We'll be right back in just a moment. When you've got it together, everyone can tell. Your confidence is obvious. Introducing Viewables.com from Smead. Use the Viewables labeling system to transform your drawer of hanging files into a tidy, organized filing system. Using the premium hanging folder tabs, see the label from the front, top, and back. It's easy. Access Viewables.com from any computer, tablet, or internet-enabled smartphone. Let's make some labels. It's free, and there's nothing to download or install. Choose the label type and format your label just the way you want. You can even add index characters or icons for distinctive filing. Set up a free Viewables cloud account, and your secure login lets you save your projects for convenient access from any computer. And with Viewables multi-purpose labels, you can use one label for any type of file, including hanging folders, top tab folders, super tab folders, or oversized items like notebooks and file boxes. Upload a list of file headings and print your complete set of labels in moments. There's even a library of templates for commonly used label sets. It's never been easier to set up neat-looking files that have easy-to-read headings and efficient color codes. Obviously organized. Viewables.com. From Smead, keeping you organized. We are back now on Keeping You Organized, watching highlights from our Season 2. We've taken some of the best tips from professional organizers from across the nation and put them all in this one program. So let's get back now to more tips and highlights from Season 2 of Keeping You Organized.
And you're exactly right as far as being in a new economy, and a lot of businesses realize that they can cut down on overhead if their employees are working from home. So we've got the telecommuting employees, and then we also have entrepreneurs and consultants who are in business for themselves and don't have a brick and mortar office. So on the one hand, that can save a lot of money. On the other hand, it creates some productivity challenges because you're no longer working right next to a lot of the people you need to communicate with. So you don't have that face-to-face interaction. You can't hang your head around the corner and knock on somebody's little cubicle door and say, hey, I've got a quick question for you. So it's almost like the freedom that we have gained from being able to set our own schedules can also be a constraint because not everybody understands how to handle that freedom.
But we want to talk a little bit about prioritization today, and our teaser line, which was, if everything's important, then nothing's important. Let's kind of unpack that a little bit and find out why.
Sounds good, John. So basically, we have so much going on. No one can do everything that they need to get done. There's all this opportunity coming at us, all this information coming at us, the little minutia, the big important things. And, when I first started out in business a number of years ago, we could actually get it done. But in the last 15, 20 years, with a shift in the economy and in business, there is so much work. Most of us are doing the work of 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 people that you can't get it all done.
Well, that was like when the computers were invented, everyone thought, well, our life's going to be easier now, right? But except they just gave us more work to do.
It's right. It like doubled and tripled what we have to do.
We're going to get right into it today because I know that here's how I feel. When I have my desk really messy and sometimes I just can't do anything else. I say, okay, well, my desk is so messy, I can't do anything. So I think getting your desk organized and looking really good and functional really actually helps you do a lot more. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. It's surprising how paralyzing your desk can be because you come in and you're completely overwhelmed. You don't know where to start. So getting your desk organized is a gateway to being more productive.
Now, as a professional organizer, I'm sure you have a certain number of tips or steps to getting your desk organized. Where would you start? You know, sometimes we look at it and we are overwhelmed, but we got to start somewhere. What's the best way to get started with getting your desktop organized?
Well, for me, it's all about creating great systems. And systems have to do with the products you might use to help you get organized, creating ways that you go about your workflow. So one of the first steps I always suggest is to have a command center, a place where all those actionable items come together. Because often actionable gets piled under filing, and so it's at a loss. So those command centers really help people get started.
Let's first maybe define what some of those important papers are, because, you know, there's a lot of different documents. And I know you're not an estate planning attorney or any of that, and we'll throw that disclaimer out here right away. But let's talk, we're really talking about how to organize those so that in the event that you do pass away, someone can find those. So what kind of papers are we talking about?
Sure. The papers that we're talking about, actually, you need to make sure you take care of way before you pass away. But some of those papers are creating a living will, so that should you become incapacitated for any reason, your family knows what your wishes are. So it gives them, or the medical physicians, the healthcare facilities, your wishes so that they can act on your behalf. Some of the other papers are a power of attorney, which allows other people to make phone calls for you, as well as access bank accounts and do correspondence on your behalf, so that, again, if you become incapacitated, there's someone who you've chosen that's appointed for that. If you have a living will, so that people know what your wishes are for, a last will and testament, so they know what your wishes are for once you do pass away. Also, what happens to your tangible property? Where does the house go? Where does the car go? And if you have money in an estate, who gets that money? Where does the money go? How much goes to charity?
Well, you know, the first issue that I have with resolutions altogether is that people will sit here year long, you know, living their life. January 1st hits and they say, oh my God, I have to change everything. And I'm going to set all of these resolutions and suddenly just do everything differently. And that's not how human beings function. Really, truly, if you're going to make these things stick, you got to make them a lifestyle change. It can't be something that you say, oh, January 1st, I'm going to do things differently. And then that's why you hit, you know, March 1st, you've given up on them, because you're suddenly trying to just shift into a totally different gear. What you need to do is try and come up with an actual lifestyle change that supports that. Like I had a client who, in addition to wanting to get organized, she was aiming for losing some weight in the new year. And that's awesome. But instead of saying, well, I'm suddenly going to do this different and do this different, you know, she needed to gradually work her way into some lifestyle changes that were going to support that. Buying healthier foods, not eating out as much, making sure she could squeeze in some time to the gym, that kind of thing.
Well, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because the common theme that our clients have is that they feel overwhelmed by their organizing project or by increasing their productivity. And so we do like to suggest very small, simple things that they can do to make a big difference. And the simple things, the small changes by themselves don't feel so overwhelming. So an example, if you have a room or an office that you need to clean out and organize and it feels like a big project, what if you started small by setting a period of time? So a 20-minute time frame to just get rid of whatever clutter you could in 20 minutes. Or you could set a small goal to toss 20 items. If you did that 5 days a week, that's 100 items that would go, right? Or 100 minutes of organizing. But it doesn't feel so overwhelming because it's 20 at a time.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing real well. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Well, most people, wouldn't you agree, kind of want to get rid of stuff, but the hard part is actually doing it. I think there's something going on in their mind, don't you think?
Yeah, I think for most people, there are at least some things that they have a tough time getting rid of.
All right. Well, let's make it simple for somebody. Let's say someone believes they have too much stuff. What can they do? How can they make an easy step to move forward?
So what I usually do when I talk to people is I find that some of them, they have items they don't want, and it's very easy. They're happy to get rid of them. But then there usually are some things that they struggle to let go of. And there are a couple of different reasons why they are probably struggling. So what I try to do is identify what's really the reason that they're having a tough time. And once we know what the real reason is, then we can come up with a plan to solve it so that they can let go of the items.
It's not a badge of honor, is it, Lisa?
No.
Why do people say it then, though? Why are they so proud of being so busy?
I think part of it is that we get really caught up in this concept of busy in our society, and people are trying to win bragging rights. Like they're actually stopping each other, and like let's say we were talking and we were like, hey, hey Lisa, how you doing? I'm like, oh God, John, I'm so busy. And you're like, oh, I know what you mean. I'm crazy busy. And then I might say something like, oh, I am so crazy busy. I didn't get any sleep last night. I mean, I went to bed at 3 a.m. and I had to get up at 6 and write this report. And you're like, sleep? Can't remember the last time I had sleep, And yet this is so negative and it's so not helping either one of us. And people are trying to one-up each other to see who's crazier and who's busier, and yet no one's talking about what they should be doing, which is, actually being productive and getting things done.
And Amy, it's not real, is it?
Oh, no, it's not real at all.
Oh. Well, why do we see these why do they put these pictures together in magazines just to kind of deflate ourselves when we know we can't really do it?
You know what? We always have to remember that in those magazines, they're trying to sell something. They're trying to make you want something. They want you to be more organized. They want you to have a prettier space. They want you to buy a new rug or a new couch, whatever it is, or a new countertop. Kitchens are huge because you see them and you're like, oh, I want a kitchen just like that. but the reality of that is that there's nobody cooking in that kitchen. Mm-hmm. So there's no living going on in those spaces.
The 5S system was created by the Japanese in post-World War II Japan, and it was created initially for manufacturing companies to decrease waste on their floor. So really it's about decreasing waste and increasing flow, and this is all part of lean daily management, which is a systematic methodology that's again focused on eliminating waste. And so it's being used in many manufacturing companies and also in healthcare. And we apply it in our offices. We apply it with our clients and in their offices, and specifically with paper.
Now, isn't part of that too, from what I understand, it's like an iterative process where you kind of do little steps, and it kind of gets better?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the steps to 5S are sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain.
Well, that's it for our highlights of season number 2. If you'd like to watch the full episodes of any of these tips, you can go to smead.com/podcast. This is John Hunt from Smead.com saying we'll see you starting in season 3 in our next episode.